Sydney Anderson, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Here, make sure pull this a little bit closer.
There we
Get comfortable. Just go wherever you like. Yeah, you're good.
There
good.
you go.
There we go. Thank you for coming in today. You worked for, excuse me, not worked, but you work for Idaho Rivers United, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
fantastic. You got in touch with me, thank you very much,
Yeah.
to invite me on to a flyover. I very unfortunately couldn't do it. And you were like, hey, there's this open mine site that, we are studying and advocating for. It leads into, the Boise River watershed and all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I couldn't make the flyover. I am really interested in all of the things around that, all of the things that really support our fundamental ways of life, right? Fundamentally, like I have an iPhone.
Yeah, I also have an iPhone.
All of this technology necessitates minerals and resources that the United States once harvested aggressively and in sometimes very inappropriately from our lands, but we have since pushed that obligation to other places. That doesn't mean that every mine proposed in the United States is a good idea, but I am really interested in understanding what the push and pull is, because ultimately, we should have a responsibility to at least understand what goes into the things that we rely on a daily basis. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Talk to me about this mine site.
Yeah. Currently the CuMo exploration project. So it's in the exploration phase. It got approved back in March of 2025 by the Forest Service to move forward with a overall 6-year plan to explore the mineral deposits up there. And the company that is managing this project is called Idaho Copper Corporation. And so what they're looking to do is go up there and across just under 3,000 acres, they're wanting to drill up to 250 drill holes across 122 drill sites to explore for copper and molybdenum and I believe silver as well. And so this is to get a general idea of where the deposits are, how valuable they are, and get an estimate of what a future mining project there could look like.
And so this is, I'm sorry, just want to, again, they were given the green light to explore, to punch a bunch of straw holes, suck out whatever was in there and be like, okay, do we have any of the valuable stuff or do we not? And they're like, okay, let's punch a bunch of these to see if we might hit a vein of silver or whatever it might be. And so that's what they're approved for at this point.
Yeah. And there has been previous efforts of exploration up there.
Sure.
And so they do know that there are deposits up there. So now it's just a matter of to what capacity and what is the grade, the value of these minerals. And so while exploration is definitely typically a much smaller scope than a full-fledged mining plan, this is quite a large exploration project. But what really concerns Idaho Rivers United and our supporters and many people I've talked to throughout the Treasure Valley is that this is being proposed to investors as becoming one of the largest copper mines in the world. What does that mean? Right now, they are proposing an open pit. So when they extract the ore, people may have seen pictures of these large pits. And so they're estimating that that pit will be 3,500 feet deep. That would make it the second largest open pit in the world. That's just behind Bingham County down in Utah, which is also a copper mine. And that scale of a project in the headwaters of the Boise River watershed, just 14 miles north of Idaho City, about 38 miles as the crow flies from Boise, is concerning. These kinds of projects have a lot of potential for degrading our water resources, degrading the land, air quality. And so our big issue with this project is one, the scale, and two, the location, because it's just upstream from Idaho's largest metropolitan area. And so a project like that, such close proximity to one, an area that contains a lot of resources that we use for other things, an area that's highly recreated, an area that is in the headwaters of our drinking water system. The Boise River surface water provides about a third of our drinking water here in Boise. And it also irrigates over 300,000 acres of farmland. So if anything were to happen in the headwaters, it has high potential to make it down into the Boise River from Grimes Creek to Moores Creek, down into the Boise River and into the water resource that we rely so much on.
Okay, that's on the table. Let's help me out here. Okay, so this is, again, predominantly a copper, and what was the other one? MO?
Molybdenum.
Okay, what is molybdenum used
It
in?
is an alloy for steel, so it strengthens steel. It's used, we actually are the United States is a net exporter of molybdenum.
Okay.
So
this is not a critical mineral. We make it ourselves.
Yeah, it is not
currently
on the critical minerals list. We actually, Thompson Creek is in central Idaho, outside of Salmon. That one is also a molybdenum mine. They are on pause right now, but they are, I believe, hoping to gear up in the next few years back in action for operations and extraction.
Is that an open pit mine as well?
And that one's already been approved. They've just been on pause for quite a while, and I think part of it was due to just the market prices of molybdenum. That can really dictate when a project moves forward, or if they pause for a period of time if the prices are not high enough for them to extract.
Gotcha.
Ore.
Is it the same company as this mine?
No. So Idaho Copper Corporation, they do not have any other mining projects besides the CuMo project. But
So they call themselves Idaho Copper, and it's like, this is the only mine you're doing.
well, this is their backstory is a little interesting. They actually, so their previous parent company was this company called Multi Metals. They're based in Canada, and they're a Canadian mining company. They have other projects that they're invested in, and they were the predominant shareholder in to this company that evolved to being called Idaho Copper Corporation. However, this last year, or it may have been 2023 or 2024, Multi Metals lost their shares to Idaho Copper to another company based in Hong Kong through a forced share sale because they owed this company debt. Their stocks were tied up with the Canadian government. They couldn't sell or trade to pay off this money that was owed to, they're called, they have quite a long name, but International Energy and Mineral Resources, I believe is their corporate title. But this company then took action and decided to force them to sell their shares of Idaho Copper. So now this project, Idaho Copper Corporation, while it's managed by them, they're predominantly owned. I believe their shares is like voting shares is 49%. They are the majority, or they have the most voting rights and majority stake in this company. So,
Gotcha.
And that's not uncommon for these shell companies that are U.S. based, Idaho based, to actually be owned by companies overseas or in Canada.
Gotcha. So, and again, it is just like, hey, we don't have any other projects here, but we're going to call ourselves Idaho Copper, and, you know, that makes us Idaho based or whatever.
Yeah. And previously, they've changed their name a couple of times. I believe before they were called American CuMo Corporation. So, yeah, this
Doesn't
is not.
really matter. Gotcha.
Yeah. They change names, they change ownership. Yeah, this is actually quite a frequent thing that we see. And so sometimes it can actually be when you're tracking a project over the years, you'll see often name changes or ownership changes.
Gotcha. So again, 14 miles, it sounds like north of Idaho City. And then, you know, a ways if you were going to drive on a road, but, you know, not that far as a crow flies, 30-ish miles to Boise. And the big concern, I mean, obviously open pit mines they obliterate the surface, right? Like it's essentially just like a gigantic funnel. And, you know, it's like you have those roads going around the outside and it's kind of darkness. But again, we all use copper, right? Like we have copper wires, we have copper piping, we have, you know, we engage in these things. The question is, what is the benefit to us for one, for instance, like local economic gain? What's the cost, right? What's the cost as far as risk and actual cost for human, you know, lack of human ability in that area, right? Because right now, I don't know how big is the pit area, right? Like, is it like a square mile or?
That, because it hasn't actually been developed, this is just from their preliminary economic assessment that they've been telling investors like, hey, this is the plan of what we want to do with this site. So as far as like how wide it is, that will just depend on how steep they have to make the walls.
Oh,
and
gotcha.
Yeah,
so that makes sense. Because you have to follow the mineral all the way. You got to follow the vein.
Yeah, and overall, another aspect that is concerning with what they're wanting to do with such a massive open pit, that also comes with a massive tailing storage facility. And what that is that's an area where the waste rock, the part of the ore that's not used or processed, gets put in a tailing storage facility, which is virtually just this massive pond of waste. And then that is held up behind a tailings dam. Their tailings dam is estimated to be 800 feet tall and 10,000 feet wide. The tallest building in Idaho.
Wait, 10,000 feet wide is like 2 miles.
Mm-hmm. And put it in perspective for Idahoans, those here in Boise, the tallest building here is, I think, roughly 320 feet tall. And so this would be
Two
massive.
and a half of those, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, almost 2 miles long. And that would just be the wall that holds back the liquid and ore and everything behind it.
Yeah. And that stays there. That does not get moved once operations are done. It's not economically feasible for them to haul all that waste off the site. So with these projects, these tailings storage facilities are meant to stay there forever and that's the tricky thing with these projects. And one of the big concerns and why there's such high potential for leakage or contamination into our soil and water systems is because it's not a matter of if these projects are going to contaminate the water, especially when they're in such close proximity. It's a matter of when. Majority of the time it does happen, especially at this scale. And oftentimes there's been numerous reports over the years with modern mines in particular that it is underestimated the degree and the severity of impacts to water quality in particular that is predicted in the beginning when they're going through their environmental review process. Most of the time during operations or exploration, there is an exceedance of what they predicted, or they did not quite model or take into consideration things like acid mine drainage and predicted like, oh, this area doesn't have the potential for that. Most of them do. And so how we review these projects and how they are managed does not quite line up with the reality of what happens in the end. And that is, we need to fill in that gap.
Are there other contemporary examples of like large tailing, you called it a station?
Storage facility.
Storage. I'd love to look one of these up. Like, are there other examples within the state?
Thompson Creek. They have quite the large tailing storage facility.
Thompson Creek tailing storage facility. Boom. Images. You guys. Yeah. Is this what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I can't remember off the top of my head the dimensions of Thompson Creek and how that compares to what is being modeled so far for the CuMo project.
What's a little disconcerting is right out of the blocks. The picture I have that the Google A pulled up is an article saying earthquake rattles central Idaho dam above the Salmon River. It's like, oh, that's bad.
Well, and that's, yeah, their structures, as much as these companies may try to make them indestructible, it's like, well, if they have to be there forever, they have to withstand earthquakes, they have to withstand other natural disasters or significant weather events such as like flooding, storms, fires, anything that can destabilize the soil or cause increased runoff from these dams or from these storage facilities is a major concern.
Gotcha. And this is the Thompson Creek mine?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I'll pop those images up on the screen so people can see. So, like, essentially it's, look, this area of Idaho is gone. There's no recouping it. There's no recovering it. Whatever mitigation efforts might be done at there, it's like, you may or may not be married. I'm not asking, but the point is that when weddings are really funny things, because at the very best, it goes as well as you were hoping. So like, you're always disappointed because your expectation is perfection, right? And it's like, it's one of those classic things. It's like the key to happiness with your wedding is low expectations. Like if you expect 5 things to go wrong and only 3 go wrong, then you're like, hey man, I'm out ahead. But if you expect nothing to go wrong and even one thing goes wrong, it's a huge problem. So like, there's no real recovery of this. And at best, nothing leaks, nothing spills. There's no earthquake in 100 years that, things come out. So essentially you have like this gigantic reservoir, roughly 2 miles wide, 800 feet high, at the dam, essentially the barrier site, the actual physical dam that's going to stop it. And that just sits there forever. The expectation is that water, the moisture collected there, from rain and seasons going through. So like, that's going to be filling up. And that's even the water, the rainwater or snow runoff that goes into that doesn't seep out anywhere, doesn't go anywhere.
Well,
That's the expectation anyway.
Because typically they will line the bottom with like a geosynthetic liner, but
like bentonite or something.
Yeah, those over time can wear down, find holes, leak.
Sure.
And then typically what I've seen with reclamation plans is they do try to de-water the waste pit, so then it's more just solid waste rock. And then
like it was underground theoretically.
And then they tried just a higher concentration of all these
nasties.
Of all this stuff. And also then with the added material such as cyanide or sulfuric acid that they use to extract the ore is also still on that waste rock. But then they often will try to cover it, put soil back over, revegetate. But the problem is these minerals and other pollutants that are either buried under the ground or have been added to this waste rock still have the potential to leach out and affect our soil quality or groundwater quality. There's oftentimes that the soil quality that's put back on top is not high enough quality for vegetation to actually grow back. And so, like you said, with weddings, the expectation, if you have low expectations and a few things go wrong, you're great. However, in these environmental review processes that the Forest Service and BLM conduct, oftentimes these models and these predictions are very optimistic, and they're on the best case scenario of what they want to happen.
They're on the 0 things going wrong. And then
that basis,
the napkin's out of place and the wedding's ruined.
Yeah. They're like, oh, if everything goes perfectly fine, then this will it'll have like a moderate impact.
Yeah.
And I was like, when does everything go according to plan ever?
Right. So the idea then ultimately is with this tailing, don't tell me. Tailing, you told me it's not tailing facility, it's tailing, come on, not dam, pit. It's not a pit. What, tailing what? What is it?
Storage.
Thank you, God.
Yeah.
Storage facility. Okay, so for the tailing storage, ultimately the idea is like, okay, look, let's get moisture out of it. Because if it's this gigantic reservoir, that's a problem. Let's put earth back over it, kind of make it like, no, we're burying it again. It was buried once. We're going to bury it again. We're going to leave the nasties that we use, cyanide and what else was it?
Typically cyanide's used for gold and silver, and then like sulfuric acid's used often for copper. And there's other chemicals that are used, acids to extract the ore.
I care a little bit less about sulfuric acid because it's in like sodas. I care a little bit more about cyanide, which is not in sodas. Anyhow, so the point is they're like, look, this came from under the ground. It's on the surface. We're going to cover it over now, and it's going to be back under the ground. And we have this big dam barrier thing that's going to stop it from leaking out, and we're going to plant things over it. So hopefully in like 100 years, no one will know what's underneath this earth, and we're going to have it all covered over. So it's not going to be like this bog of eternal, cyanide or something of that nature. That's kind of the reclamation plan, right?
Typically, yeah.
Okay. But the risk obviously is, okay, if there's any permeability of the basin that you created, right, or that you used, then water will be leaching out itself. If there's any permeability with that, as it, you have moisture naturally coming down into it, it's going to become like a leaky fishbowl under the ground. So that could be, like if you have this big thing and one drain going out, then it could be draining out to the side and eventually come and cause problems with our water. By the way, it's already in the ground. So like we could already have problems. Like we have naturally occurring problems in water systems already, but this would be one that was the fault of the mine, right?
Yeah. And I think the difference between naturally occurring and then something that's extracted and then try to put back underground and like cover it up is the concentration then increases of these materials. Yeah. And you should care about sulfuric acid because any sort of acid mine drainage, it can not only the acid can get into our water system, but it can also make it so these other minerals that are naturally occurring erode quicker into our water system, especially with increased runoff.
So it's not just that you have concentration of nasty that was in the ground, then you have concentration of added stuff to help extract the minerals, and those things themselves then become problematic in a long enough time frame in those concentrations in that area.
Yeah, and it just increases the concentration. And like during operations, you're exposing a lot more rock that's typically underground that has a lot more potential then to leach into the soil, groundwater, surface water.
Gotcha.
So it's more of the fact that we're exposing a lot more of what is in the earth and then adding on top of that other chemicals that then expedite that process of it leaching into the system. And there are mitigation measures to try to control it, but there's failures, there's inadequacies in the system, or there's unpredicted weather events that cause problems, accidents that happen. And so for these scale of projects, I mean, one accident can be pretty devastating.
I understand risk. Okay. And like I had to take a plane flight recently and I was like, all that needs to happen is one bad thing. And this is a real problem. And of course I see this dumb video on like TikTok of some guy like duct taping the side of an airplane.
It's right before you board every time.
Like every time they just know. And it turns out it's like, okay, it was not duct tape. It was like some other thing. The plane is airworthy, right? But it's like we deal with a lot of things where it's like, look, one bad thing happens and it's over. And we have things like iPhones. We have really advanced technologies. Like, yeah, that's true. Like one bad thing happens on the freeway when you're going 80 miles an hour and it's really, really bad. But like we have checks and balances. So are there contemporary examples of, obviously not this particular mine, but of other mine sites within the United States where it's like, look, we have 200 major copper, pit mines in the United States. And of those 200 in the last 20 years, we've had 50 of them fail in some really bad way. Or is it like, no, we have 200 and in the last 30 years, we've only had an issue with one of them. Like, do we have contemporary examples of problems? And so I can assess like there is a risk, but what's the probability of that risk?
Yeah. A lot of it depends on one, the kind of mine that it is with hard rock or like what mineral they're going for, because that dictates what chemicals or what other minerals will be exposed.
Let's try like copper or molybdenum.
Yeah. So overall, like gold, copper, silver, there's a case study, I believe it was like almost 20 years ago, but is some of the more recent data we have, and the Government Accountability Office has also recently done a more recent review on this, but it's around 76% of the mines in the West, in particular, because most of our hard rock mining is here in the West, end up contaminating water, surface water, groundwater resources. Overall, the EPA has estimated that 40% of our headwaters, just in the West alone, are contaminated because of hard rock mining.
Here's a question for you. That sounds terrible, by the way. How many of those are contemporary mines? Because we had some dirty, horrible, morally depraved mine practices, even within the state of Idaho in, let's say the last century. But if we look at everything from like 1980 onward. It's like, how many of the mines from 1980 onward? Because if we just want to say all the mines since like 1850, yeah, man, there were some dirty things.
Right.
And people being shady and corporations just not, but like, so do we have a time frame associated with those?
With the EPA, I'm not exactly sure what their time frame was. The other study that has been replicated a few times, that was based post I believe like 1987 or 84 to the mid 2000s. And so that was post environmental laws and regulations that started coming into play in the 70s. And so, that is more of the contemporary mines that we are seeing today. And
that's the 40% of our headwater number that you gave
that's
me?
the 76% are contaminating water resources.
Gotcha.
And oftentimes, and that number also goes up if you put in parameters like if there's high potential for acid mine drainage, meaning the mineral that they're extracting and the chemicals they're using have the potential to create sulfuric acid or another acid that will then leach into the soil or the water, directly into surface water, groundwater. That number goes up also if they're in close proximity to water resources. I mean, of course, that number is going to go up the closer you are to rivers, streams, and aquifers. So out of the mines that they did look at, that number went to 93% probability or 93% of them did contaminate water resources.
But again, that last bump is just a probability. That's not a like this has already happened.
No, sorry, not I misspoke. It did happen.
Okay.
So they were reviewing documents of mines that are in operation, and these things had already happened. So this wasn't just a probability, but this is like a.
So we have north of 90% of mines since with contemporary mining practices since, for instance, the 1980s onward. Over 90% of those do end up contaminating or contributing to contamination in our waterways.
Yeah, when they're in close proximity to water and they have high potential for, or moderate high potential for leaching and acid mine drainage, which a lot of them do. That's just the nature.
That's just the nature of the locations, right?
The locations and how they're extracting the ore.
So to be clear, what it sounds like you're saying is like, look, man, if this was 50 miles away from any river, creek, water source in, wherever, then we would not be having the same conversation. Where the number is coming from is where this resource is located compared to waterways. And that's the big consideration. So it's not like, hey, I hate all mining no matter what. It's like, right. No. Like, not all mines are created equally. Not all opportunities are created equally. And not all minerals are also needed with the same urgency. So if you're like, look, man, we're getting copper and
molybdenum. Say it 3 times
there
fast.
It is. And, maybe some silver. It's like, okay, great. Like that's all well and fine. And that stuff has a certain value within the United States market. But is that resource and extracting that resource in the location it's in the way it is that the value of that justified for the risks and damage that it will likely cause?
And that's our question when we look at projects. I mean, I think according to the Department of Lands here in Idaho, we have around 1,500 mines, active mines. At IRU, there's 3 that we're majorly concerned about. And when we're involved in projects, we usually comment and try to help improve or like, hey, can you mitigate in this way instead of this way? Like this would be a much better way to do this for the sake of water quality, fish habitat recovery, stuff like that. But there's times that, I mean, when we talk about responsible mining, to us, that also means understanding that some places are too risky or too important to extract minerals from. And we need to be, overall as a country, we need to be a lot more strategic of what projects do get approved. Because right now, hard rock mining is regulated under a law from 1872, has not really been changed since then. And it puts mining above all other uses virtually of our public lands.
Explain that to me, the mining of 1872.
So the mining law from 1872 was written by and passed by President Ulysses S. Grant. I always butcher his name.
I can't say molybdenum. Okay.
But this law made it so that public lands were open for exploration, staking claims, and mineral extraction. And this was written in a time when our government, our country wanted to expand in the West. It was an opportunity for Joe with his pickaxe and a shovel to go build some wealth for his family in his country.
Let's go, Joe.
And try to
right.
build some more industries out here in the West.
Sure.
It was not written to manage the impacts of these projects. It was written to help with claim disputes, especially like coming to the end of the gold rush era,
right.
and property claims and all those kinds of things. It was not written to manage projects of international conglomerate mining companies that now are moving mountains to extract this ore. So this law does not provide any environmental stipulations, any royalties, anything to give back to the communities that are impacted by these projects. It was only written to deal with the claims and who has the rights to that land and to those minerals. So in the US, we really don't have an encompassing law that manages the results of these modern day projects or historical projects for that matter as well.
Got it. So it's really just, hey, we have a lot of people moving west. You know, again, like they struck gold, 49ers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like people flooded the West Coast in pursuit of, you know, riches. And they essentially what you're saying is like there had to be a framework to help support that industry and help support that way of life. And it's like, okay, let's put this all together so we know, you know, who got what, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't know why this keeps coming up, but that film Far and Away, where it's like they're, you know, giving away land. And there was like very clear, you know, like you got to get your flag in first and like all these different things. And let's make some law so that people still find value in going out here, because then they're spreading across the West and, you know, industry, the whole big deal. And it didn't anticipate the 2-mile long, 800-foot high dam that's like, hey man, you got arsenic and, you know, sulfuric acid in here, and it's, you know, 30 miles away as the crow flies from the capital city, right next to like watersheds. It didn't factor that in because that was essentially just an impossibility.
Yeah. And also back then, I mean, I'm pretty sure the environment was not really consideration with these kinds of things in general, which is, I mean, the scale, mining has changed a lot. There are better technologies, there's mitigation measures, we do have environmental laws, but also to that same point, it's changed a lot in the scale and just the brevity of the impact that these projects now have. But our policies are stuck in 1872. So we're managing these projects like we're still in the 1800s, in the 19th century, but we have 21st century problems now. And so when it comes to the projects that we're concerned about, of course, these projects are a problem in our eyes, but the bigger umbrella is reforming that mining law and making it so that we're managing them a lot better, especially in a time when we're trying to increase domestic production. It's like, okay, great. But we shouldn't be doing this based on a law with 19th century values. We need to update it to represent what are priorities now and really protect the people that utilize that area, that live in the area, that hunt, fish, or outfitters in that area who have grazing permits in that area. There's nothing really protecting them. And once a mining claim is staked, that is then what that land is used for. You can't really overrun that. Vice versa, if there's already a grazing permit, but then someone stakes a mining claim where your grazing permit is, it's like, well, too bad. Like that,
Gotcha.
It's now being used by the mining company.
Gotcha. One of the biggest things you told me today is that there are 1,500 active mines and you really only have a problem with 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important, like, that needs to be pinned on this, which is, hey, look, it doesn't appear that you guys are no mine, no way, no how. It's like, no. Just let's look at what we're getting out of it. Let's look at all the contributing factors and take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. And like that should be understood as, like, I just really appreciate pragmatic policy and consideration instead of, you know, what I consider more professional advocacy, which is like, no. This is like, our position is this, like, this is our organization. We are opposed to hard rock mining in any situation, anywhere that we have control over, right? Or within our boundary of influence, right? And again, that's not the case. It doesn't appear that that's the case with you guys. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What, if I may ask, is one of the other mines you're worried about the stibnite mine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
episode number 2. We'll do episode number 2 of that. Let's stay on this one. Yeah. Anything else we need to know about the CuMo mine? CuMo?
Yeah.
CuMo,
so copper, molybdenum. Yeah, that's where the acronym comes in.
CuMosi, silver.
Yeah. But this project in particular, I mean, it's in such a critical area for the Treasure Valley, for farmers in this area, recreators.
Sure.
And it's not to say that Idaho Copper Corporation wouldn't try to do their due diligence to make this a great project and to not have a catastrophic disaster. But historically, and also just in recent times, that is not the case more often than not. And that's why we are so concerned, because the track record does not back up mining companies' claims that they're going to, granted, Idaho Copper, they haven't come out with a mine plan yet, but when there's mining companies that claim that a site's going to be better off once they're done, it's like, we haven't seen that yet, but please prove us wrong. And it's, I mean, these projects, well, yes, mining does bring an economic benefit, but let's put that in a little bit broader perspective. It is quite a short-term benefit. There's multiple reports and studies now that, especially in like rural communities, they tend to create a boom and bust cycle. They come into this small town, they create this mine. They say there's so many jobs now coming to this area. Great. What they don't tell you is like, well, most of the jobs, especially the high paying ones, are going to the professionals, the experts that travel for that work.
Right.
They're hired on outside of that community. Unless that community is full of just expert miners, engineers, hydrologists. It's like usually that's contracted out, or they're flying someone over that has done this for a while.
Sure.
Which rightfully, I mean, they should. But then there's some of these other like supportive roles that, are left to the community. And then you have this influx of people now coming into these small communities. It's like helps businesses, increase traffic. They have to build new infrastructure to then support this increase in population growth. But then once the mining project's over, what is left behind is the infrastructure that then the people that were there, that are staying there, can't support through their taxes. They can't pay to keep that up. And then what is often not, I don't think I've ever really seen this considered in an economic analysis done on these projects, is the long-term impacts that are left behind. Even if reclamation is done according to their plan, there's still long-term management that has to happen, especially when it comes to water quality, more often than not. And it doesn't take into account the long-term degradation and the cost it takes to clean that up. And also what that does then to local businesses, especially for like the outdoor recreation community or agriculture, and how that hinders their economic output and what they're able to do.
Oh, sure. Especially with the water resource in the state. Like, that's a huge consideration.
Mm-hmm. So while these projects advertise this great economic benefit, the benefit's pretty short term, and long term you do see, I mean, kind of a net negative situation for these communities that are supporting this project.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, to your earlier point, it's like, look, it's majority shareholders, an international company, right? This is kind of a shell company in Idaho. So they're just popping in, not even owned by the U.S. The individuals that are going to be the highest paid people are not going to be localized people. They'll be people that get flown in, whatever. The grunt work will likely be done by, local Idahoans and whatnot. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't be happy to have those jobs. But if you look at a long enough time frame, it's like, okay, how long? Like, do you have 20 years of prosperity and then, you know, you become another town in Idaho where it's like, oh yeah, we used to have like a timber industry and that closed down, and like, oh yeah, that's the old mine site, and you know, now we only have 500 people here. We used to be, you know, busting at the seams at 20,000 and everything was great. And then the industry dried up and, you know, that was it. It was over because there was nothing to replace it.
Right.
And again, that's not like a nefarious intent, right? That's the nature of, you know, specific industries.
It's not like they're coming in trying to exploit that, but
but it is something that is a reality for the people in the area.
Yeah. The benefits get overstated and overinflated, and they don't take in the weighted costs, not just monetary costs, but outside factor or other factors such as the degradation to water quality or soil quality, or how this will indirectly affect in the long run local businesses, the local communities. And most of the profits obviously that are created from these projects, sure, there's like taxes paid, some maybe revenues given back to the community. It's not that much in the long run, and most of it goes back to
the shareholders.
It's not seen at a local level. It's seen maybe at a state level, and at a national level economically potentially. But if those companies or those shareholders aren't based here, also it's not
right. And again, like this is a reality of some versions of mining. Okay, great. Like, you're going to have international companies that come in and harvest minerals. Like, okay, like that happens. Back to the point of, this is just the wrong place to do it. It's not even wrong in that it's in Idaho. It's like, no, you can do a copper mine in Idaho. Just don't do it right next to, you know, this water resource and don't do it for these reasons, right? Like, if you're talking about some, you know, vital critical mineral, that's another consideration, which is like, okay, is copper or the other ones, are those hyper, like, do we not have any other source of those? Like, these are all considerations. And it's like, no, man, it's pretty common. And like, yeah, we have other sources of this stuff, and it's not like, this is not the only place we'll ever get copper. Yeah, it's a big deposit, which means big dollar signs for some people, but the cost or potential cost is actually quite significant. So, you know, again, all things to factor in.
Yeah, and it's the hard thing too with hard rock mining in particular, with how the law is written and just kind of vagueness, it pretty much makes our land management agencies, BLM, Forest Service, kind of puts their hands tied. So if there's valuable minerals there that a company wants to extract, it is almost impossible for these agencies to say no.
Interesting.
They pretty much have to give it the green light, unless procedurally there's something wrong. They're like, hey, no, you have to fix this, and then go back and fix it, and then move forward with it. So it's very hard to stop these kinds of projects with how our laws are written. And what's also concerning is that, yes, of course, like in our national economy, we have international companies that play a huge role. But we just give kind of free range for our public lands. Through these claims, typically there's patented claims and unpatented claims. The most common practice nowadays is unpatented claims, which means that the company has the rights to the minerals, but the Forest Service or the BLM still own the land.
Gotcha.
However, and this is I will specify federal public land. This is not for private or state land.
Sure.
But virtually, I mean, these companies have all the rights to do what they want on that land. They can shut it off to the public. They can, within their plan, whatever their scope is, build whatever facilities. Like, they pretty much own that land during their permit or the time frame that they have to mine. And so we're just opening up all of our public lands to basically anybody that can pay the very nominal fee to get a mining claim and don't have to pay any royalties. Oil and gas industry pays 8 to 12% royalties to extract on federal land. Hard rock mining industry, none of that is reserved back for the local communities or the government to use. And also,
that's interesting. So even on like tribal lands, so my dad lived in acreage for a couple decades, and there was always a discussion of essentially royalties that were paid out to native tribes there because they were making a bunch of oil money off the native. So like if that were a hard rock thing up there, like they wouldn't have to be paying them. Man, that's wild. Why the distinction? Do you know? Or is it just because of the 1872?
Yeah, and it's been unchanged. There's been, I mean, reforming that law is not a new idea. It's been going on. People have been talking about this for decades, but it hasn't happened. A royalty rate of like 4 to like 8% has been proposed a couple of times, but it always gets shut down. A lot of that is, I mean, with our political climate here in the West, there's a lot of pro-industry, which is fine, but they don't want to see that. The mining industry has a lot of political sway as well and has a lot of input with our political leaders. And be like, hey, we don't want that. And it's like, well, of course you don't want that. You don't want to lose your profits. But when the reclamation, I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. For reclamation, there is a bond amount that is set in the beginning.
Sure. In case the company goes bankrupt, you have to be made whole.
That oftentimes is an underestimated value for what the reclamation costs are. And that's because, I mean, not for lack of trying, that I can only imagine is a hard thing to predict.
Like you have no,
there's so many moving
we don't know how much a house will cost to build in 2 years, right?
And since with how we were talking about earlier, the predictions of the true impacts of this project, what's predicted versus what's actually happening. Yeah. Since there's a discrepancy there, of course, there's going to be a discrepancy with the amount of money set aside. Yeah. But then that's where things such as royalties can help fill in that gap. Because right now, I mean, for abandoned mines, we have over 500,000 abandoned mines. And those were before any environmental laws or like bonds that were needed or created. And so we are in billions and billions of dollars that are needed for the federal government to clean up those sites that they do not have.
Gotcha.
And with modern day mines, there's still often, not all the time, but there's still often enough a discrepancy between the reclamation, true reclamation costs and what was set aside in the beginning.
Gotcha. Sydney, look, let's do this. Come back. Let's hit all 3 of your mine sites. I'd like to understand all of them. I'm actually going to see, taking a trip up to the Stibnite mine in a week or 2. I'm going to go physically see it. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to take pictures, videos, the whole bit. And again, better understand it, right? Because this is, the Stibnite mine in particular is one where it's like, okay, this is a really important thing, right? Like you're not getting your iPhone without antimony, like we're not getting bullets, that like this is a really important thing. That doesn't mean obviously that it's like, oh, de facto, whatever you have to do to get it, like burn down the place. It's like, whoa, let's not burn down the place. But let's, again, I would love to have you back and continue the conversation about other sites.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for coming on today, and we'll get after it.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.